The Sorcerer-King, Solomon. His legend is contained within grimoires, seals, and ancient texts that describe him commanding demons and bending unseen forces to his will. But was this mastery a gift from God, or the first recorded compromise between the divine wisdom and forbidden power? And as 2026 rolls in even more continued obsession with secret knowledge, can Solomon's wisdom still be trusted? His name appears in occult manuscripts just as much or more than it does in the Holy Scripture. And one thing that we need to take into account when talking about Solomon, this mysterious figure from legends and Scripture, is that he was a figure of duality. He was revered as both holy and esoteric, a master of knowledge, but also of the unseen. It says in Scripture that during a dream or a vision within a dream, that God asked him what he wanted, what his heart's desire was. And Solomon, without hesitating, asked for wisdom. And as the story goes, he was granted this wisdom. Kings, queens, royalty, people from all over the world came to hear him speak and to hear some of this knowledge from God. His temple was a great example of this knowledge and wisdom. The layout is thought to be, in some way, a model of the universe. Much of that remains a mystery, and many speculate. But of course, most will agree that we're not meant to explore this mystery, but it still does not stop occultists from using its design in rituals and hierarchies of magical practices and these magical systems that they've come up with. Legend has it that its construction was aided by the labor of actual demons, these powerful beings that were actually enslaved by Solomon with the use of a magical ring. This was the six-sided or six-pointed star, the Star of David, his father. But as many have pointed out lately, that it was in fact also similar to the Star of Remphan, which is mentioned in the Old Testament. Now, Remphan, or Saturn, was the god of death and destruction, a pagan deity. We could call it a contradiction. Why would he be wearing the insignia or symbol of a pagan god while invoking his power to build a temple to the true God, which one could say that they were using this being as a building block to build that. You could make that argument, but it's a strange kind of almost contradiction in the construction of this temple. Of course, he was the god of destruction and death and dissolution. And if you haven't seen my video on Saturn, I've made several videos about Saturn. I just made one about the Halloween Saturn connection. I'll link that here. Through all of this knowledge that he gained, it's said that, or it's implied, that the knowledge itself is what corrupted him. And slowly over time, he lost control of it. Another likely pivotal moment came in the surrendering of a temple dedication. His wife was a foreigner who worshiped a foreign god, and she asked that he dedicate his temple, one of his temples, to her pagan god. And at some point he obliged, and this supposedly infuriated the god, the true God. With all these myths and legends, the question emerges, can his wisdom be trusted? It's been handed down, reinterpreted, recycled, refiltered, and we have it, several versions of it. And we have the Psalms and Proverbs, which he and his father David wrote some of the Psalms and Proverbs. And there's a lot of just cutting edge, no BS wisdom in those books. Was his mind or soul corrupted? And it's a valid question. I can put it this way, there's so many books, works of literature, philosophy, just ways of thinking that aren't necessarily contained or intended to be, the canon, canonical to the Holy Scripture. But that should never, ever stop anyone from extracting knowledge and wisdom from that. Every country, every race of people has their kind of philosophical beliefs, and there is wisdom in all of them. We don't have to take the entire corpus of their work and believe it all entirely. It's the mark of an intelligent mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. We don't have to take it on and believe every single detail. Even the prophets who came through and delivered the message in the Holy Scriptures, they were extremely flawed people. Moses was supposed to dictate these things to entire cities of people, and he had a stutter. He was, you could call him a coward. He just refused and tried to excuse his way out of it when God told him to go back, and he just wasn't an effective communicator, and he hadn't really gained that bravery yet. David was Solomon's father was a murderer, tried to steal a man's wife. He pretty much did. God himself is not going to step into reality. It would destroy us, for one thing. He has to send a messenger, and the messenger is going to be less than God. It's not God himself. So we'll always have this element of being less than. There's going to be some moral failing somewhere, but it's not the messenger that should be measured to the same standard as what's within the actual message and the truth, the truth itself, which transcends all of that stuff. We should test these things. I've implemented so much of Solomon's wisdom into my life. And David and the Psalms and the Proverbs, guard your tongue, be careful about what you say and you unleash into the world, because you can't put it back. It's the toothpaste, trying to put the toothpaste back in the bottle. It just doesn't, it's impossible. The duality is something that cannot be completely reconciled. There will always be a duality, a battle of wills within an individual, even when you're saved, enlightened, or the wisest man in the world. That sin nature, poor Solomon used the phrase under the sun to describe this world, what's going on in this world, and just this part of space-time, this existence that we're in, this river of time that we're in. And he described it as being under the sun. There's something coming apart. There's something flawed, deeply flawed, and that flaw is the entropy that degrades everything, and it's gnawing at the edges of the human soul, all human souls, and it will manifest itself in some way. Of course, he said himself that the more wisdom, the more grief. It's almost an impossible thing to measure. And from the standpoint of someone who doesn't understand, who hasn't gone to that edge and hasn't seen the things that the wise have seen, the experienced have seen, it's easy to judge and to stand back and say, well, that's not correct, but that's not the right way to go about it. Test your own experience. Implement those things and see if they work for you. I think if you use the wisdom found in these books by Solomon, by David, and much of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, these things it just happens organically. You see for yourself. I want you to judge for yourself, always think for yourself, but in my experience, these things have helped me tremendously. And there's a truth that's very, very difficult. Like Ecclesiastes is just, it's a downer, But if you implement these things and really take it to their limit, to their logical conclusion, there's just a little seed of truth that will grow from that. And you, when asked about it later, you can answer from your own experience that in my opinion, this man truly was very wise, and that his wisdom came from the truth. Many do bring up his flaws, his sort of those times in his life where he yielded to these gods, this paganism, and they're valid arguments, but it's something that we can debate. You know, if you want to debate in the comments, please be respectful. This is heavy stuff, and people get up in arms about you know, their doctrine and truth. But let's discuss it. Let's discuss it there. Just try to be respectful. But he was an enigmatic figure, and he's always been this kind of archetypal wise man, the shaman, the master of the magical systems too. He was revered in the occult as much as he was in Christianity. So it's a very, like I said, there's the dualism. He's got this dual nature, and both sides claim him, and it's strange. And they're both of their claims, both sides of those claims are not unfounded. So check out some of my other work here, and I'll see you all in the next video.